Here at Mediators Foundation, we've been on an amazing but humbling journey. It began in 1986 when we asked a very simple question. Can we transform conflict? Can we build bridges across the great divides of our time? Asking those questions has led us to become one of the leading incubators for conflict resolution projects in America today. Along the way, we've learned some valuable lessons, and we'd like to share them with you. Why? Because our future may depend on it. 30 years ago, Ronald Reagan was president. The world was divided by an iron curtain. America itself was polarizing. While the nuclear missiles of the two superpowers were threatening our lives and our children's futures, most of us were just not paying attention. 30 years ago, it was a very puzzling time because we had nuclear weapons that we knew were pointed at us and pointed at our enemies. We could really destroy the world in seconds, and people weren't talking about it. They were watching sitcoms and, football games and just doing business as usual. It was terrifying and, frankly, mystifying. It became very clear that Americans watched movies. Americans loved movies, but the movies were putting us to sleep at best, and at worst, they were making us absolutely hate and fear and despise our enemies. So with a handful of small investors and a big dream, we started Mediators Productions. We wanted to inspire everyone to take action. And my board of directors and I expected we'd make serious profits, and we'd pass those profits on to our sister organization, Mediators Foundation. It became very clear to me that in Hollywood, you could not make a film that challenged the Cold War us versus them ideology. You had to run with it. You had to exploit those fears, not challenge them. And then when I was in Moscow, I realized the same thing. They couldn't make films that challenged the anti-American ideology. They could only make films and get them funded by the Communist Party if they went with the stereotypes, went with the propaganda. And so there were artists, filmmakers who were frustrated on both sides of the Iron Curtain. And I thought to myself, what if we could get these filmmakers together, looking eye to eye, and saying, we're going to change this and actually make films serve peace rather than serve war. That was our dream. So we stopped trying to make a film. Instead, we decided to try to change the film industries.
And a delegation of 10 of the Soviet Union's most influential directors, actors, and writers are here in Los Angeles meeting with members of the American entertainment industry. This is the first cultural exchange ever of its kind, and it's all being sponsored by the Entertainment Summit.
Our first major project, the Soviet American Entertainment Summit, brought together top film producers and actors in Hollywood and Moscow. Our goal was to try to help end the Cold War on the big screen by putting an end to movies that exploited tension between the superpowers. For me, the beginning of the summit was feeling hurt and angry when I saw how we were portrayed in Soviet cinema. And then I spent time with Soviets, and I saw their hurt and their anger when they saw how they were portrayed in our cinema. Because of the summit, stereotyping the other side in films decreased significantly. It became clear to all of us that this landscape of conflict was changing. We'd lost an external enemy, and we were starting to turn each other into enemies. It was the years of the Clinton presidency, and communities were starting to polarize into left versus right. So we started a project called the Common Enterprise. We brought the factions together, and we helped them develop projects that would strengthen their communities. I described this experience in a book I wrote called A House Divided: 6 Belief Systems Struggling for America's Soul. As a result of writing the book, I was invited to give a speech on Capitol Hill, and that led to my being invited to be a designer and facilitator of the first bipartisan congressional retreats. So in 1997, and again in 1999, Mediators Foundation collaborated with the Aspen Institute on what turned out to be the largest peacetime movement of Congress in history. Over 200 members of the House of Representatives and their spouses went to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and focused on a critical issue: how they related to one another. We started our project, the Center for Transpartisan Leadership. We began hosting TED-style talks across the country. Our focus was clear: to make the skills of bridge building available to everyone.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and I'm just really excited to be here. Transpartisanship is one of those things where I was sort of living my personal and professional life through a lens and perspective, but didn't know that there was a growing community and movement of people who also could see beyond and could see what politics and what our life spheres could be like.
While profiling citizen leaders, we also decided to focus on some tough, controversial issues. For example, working closely with our colleagues at Reuniting America, we assembled a cross-section of citizens on climate change and energy independence. They included former Vice President Al Gore, who had just released his film, An Inconvenient Truth, about climate change. It also included leaders of the organization putting out attack ads against his film, the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
We've wandered into a political region in which partisan conflict has become more intense than in almost any other period in American history. And that makes it especially important now to find ways to use the conflict for good rather than to allow it to unravel.
We may still disagree, but now we will disagree on a much more profound basis. We will disagree because we disagree about the consequences of the policy, not about the honorableness of the policy itself.
Many other transpartisan alliances also emerged from these retreats and helped other groups find common ground.
I have received so many positive emails from our constituents and, surprisingly, from Move On constituents who've actually emailed me over at Christian Coalition. And they just, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming together. This is true, nonpartisan. I mean, so it's been fairly positive. I haven't received hardly any negative. About the same thing. Yeah.
I mean, there are always people that are going to be unhappy because they've gotten set in this us and them situation. But most Americans want to be united.
We then took this domestic work international. For a decade, I worked with the United Nations Development Program as a mediator and leadership trainer. And during that time, I was privileged to meet some of the world's greatest peacemakers.
Daq Ibrahim Abdi from Concerned Citizens for Peace.
My name is Emmanuel Bombandi. I work with ONEP, the West African Network for Peace Building.
Norbert Ropers from the Berkhow Foundation for Peace Support.
I'm Scilla Elworthy. I work with Peace Direct in the UK.
I'm Susan Collin Marks, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Search for Common Ground.
My name is Stella Mystica Sabiti. I come from Uganda. I'm working at the African Union Peace and Security Department.
I really wanted their voice to be magnified. The world keeps hearing from generals and politicians, but we never hear from the people who are preventing war and helping countries heal from war. By bringing them together, I wanted to give them a collective voice. We called that project the Conflict Transformation Collaborative. It was an independent learning community for the world's peacemakers. Today, we are managing a dozen projects that are bridging divides. Some of these projects are started within Mediators Foundation, like the Bridge Alliance, being co-led by my colleagues Debbie Lynn Molyneux and David Nevins. Another one of the projects we have launched is the Bridge Summit, directed by my longtime friend and board member, John Steiner. Others are independent startups, like Joan Blade's Living Room Conversations or John Gable's All Sides for Schools. Some are focused domestically, like Scott Brown's Active Peace Project. Others are international, such as William Urey's The Third Side Project. So over these 30 years, we've been fortunate to support a remarkably diverse set of projects. But I was watching them very closely and noticed one underlying common theme. It was getting harder and harder to raise money for projects that were building common ground. And one of the reasons for that is that more money was being sucked to the right and to the left. And there was less money left for those who really wanted to build understanding and respect through dialogue. So we brought together some of the major philanthropic executives in partnership with the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. We invited them to sit down together, face each other, and explore how could they use their financial resources to unify rather than splinter this country that we all love. Even after more than 30 years, Mediators Foundation's focus is the same: preventing conflict and promoting collaboration. Because clearly, the challenges we face are greater than ever. If you would like to learn more about how you can become involved, please visit our website. We look forward to hearing from you and working together to build the bridges of the future.